So this is a bit of a short notice because this game between Minnesota versus Nashville is about to kick off in about 3.5 hour time at the time of this recording. And usually when there's a game happening on Tuesday, I would always do the preview on Monday, but since yesterday I was relatively busy and could not do the recording of the preview, that's why I am doing it right now, and that I'm only doing part one and look at the first 6 games of this preview, because if I would have looked at all 13 games, there's no way in the world I can upload that video in time before this Nashville versus Minnesota game that is going to be kicking off. And also for part number 2, I think after I finish recording this video, I'll just switch up the boards and look at part number 2 of the preview, and that while I am recording part number 2 of the preview, I will also upload part number 1 of the preview onto my channel. And one last thing is that this week is also international break. Yes, the international break is finally back after it's been suspended because of the you-know-what pandemic that is going on, which means that it is that time of the year again where teams are going to complain the fact that they hate this time of period because they have to lose a couple of players during the international break, but they still, of course, have to play games. Although this year, I think it's a little bit of a worse situation because first, every team's going to have to deal with, because every single team will have to play during the international break. And since the schedule is so congested because of the shortened season, most likely now teams are not going to just lose their player on international duty for 1 or 2 games, but there could be 3 or 4 games that these teams are going to miss their players, and some even said that they could be missed 5 or 6 games because of once they return to their club, they need to, of course, go into their mandatory self-isolation period before they can get ready to get back in the team. So it's a bit of a mess, and I know this is going to really cause a little bit of a havoc, and that in many ways this is going to be interesting in this home stretch of the schedule where, I know every single team is going to be a little bit shorthanded, not just because of injuries that they're going to eventually have to deal with, but also now players on international duty, and that some of these players will probably miss the half of the remaining schedule that is left for this season. But that being said, let us actually get into the first game after I did my little 2.5-minute spiel. And as I mentioned, the first game I'm going to talk about is the game that's going to kick off in about 3.5 hours time, which is Nashville versus Minnesota United. Nashville SC coming into this game with a 4-5-5 record, while the Loons coming into this game with a 6-4-5 record. This game kicks off at 8:30 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Nashville has yet to lose at home this season since phase 1 of the schedule was released, while Minnesota, they have yet to win on the road ever since phase 1 of the schedule that is released. The good news for Nashville is that they're one of the few clubs that don't have to worry about players that is going to be leaving on the international duty. While for Minnesota, the only player that is going to be leaving on international duty is going to be young Gregush, but that is definitely a pretty big blow for the Loons, especially if Ozzy Alonso is not going to be back with the Loons in this game, and I haven't heard anything that talks about him have trained with the team, or the fact that there's a timetable of when exactly he's going to come back. That's a huge hole that the Loons are going to have to deal with in the midfield, and that, this also kind of makes me hope that Ozzy Alonso comes back to this team as soon as possible, because I know Gregush is not going to be part of this team at least for 2 or 3 games, and this is kind of the time where we really need Ozzy Alonso the most out of any time that we need right now. But in terms of this game, and actually I need to get my marker on, I'm going to say it's going to be a draw between both of these teams. Now, I would want the Loons to win this game, because if the Loons are going to not only make the playoffs, but at least have a home game in their first round of the playoffs, these are kind of games that they have to win. Although, that being said, the Loons this season, as I mentioned, on the road, they have not been great whatsoever, and that they're about to face a Nashville team that one of the biggest reason why Nashville is in the playoff contention is because they have a rock-solid defense. And while the Loons' attack has been relatively decent in the last couple of games, it's been quite frustrating seeing the fact that our attack, while it might be decent, but they just could not put the ball into the back of the net. And while we don't also have to worry about our defense potentially going to face a very good Nashville attack side, because Nashville, besides FC Cincinnati, are the worst scoring team in MLS. I just feel like if we're going to have to win this game, we need to score goals and we need to put away those chances. And something tells me we're not going to get as much chances as we're going to get against FC Cincinnati, because again, this Nashville defense is no joke whatsoever. And if you don't put away your chances, you're most likely not going to get a lot of chances against them. But either way, I would love to see if Minnesota can get a draw out of this game, because again, for the rest of the season, it's all about getting draw or wins on the road and then getting all 3 points at home. And if we can continue to do that, then I have a feeling not only we'll make the playoffs, but we're going to get at least a home game during the playoff time that's going to be happening in November. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be the Red Bulls and Inter Miami, as this game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is the only game that's going to be taking place on Tuesday, while the rest of the 13-game action is going to be taking place on Wednesday, which means it's going to be another busy Wednesday night, where I'm unfortunately going to have to say that most likely I'm not going to able to catch a lot of these action, and that once again I'm going to have to split my review into 2 parts because of just how many games that is going to be taking place at the same time. And that once again we're probably going to have a point where there's going to be 7 games that could simultaneously play at the same time. Now, as I mentioned, this game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Red Bulls have a 6-2-7 record, while Miami has a 3-2-10 record and tie with DC United with the worst record in MLS. The Red Bulls, of course, they lost 3-1 away to Orlando City, while Miami, they have lost 3 in a row. And all of a sudden, you know how that defense has been relatively solid, even during that losing run that they were to start the season? Now things are started to get worse in their defense, because they have conceded 10 goals during the losing streak, including 3 straight games. Now they have conceded more than 2 goals that they have not done in their first 12 games this season. Now, player on international duty for the Red Bulls, you got Cáceres Juniors, and Kaku is going to be out for this team because of international duty. Obviously, those players are pretty big for the Red Bulls, especially Kaku in the attacking end, so he's going to be solely missed for the Red Bulls, especially on the attacking end. Well, for Miami, Pizarro is not going to be available for them, but probably the bigger loss for Inter Miami, besides losing Pizarro for what they said could be 4 to 5 games for this season, is that they probably will not have Luis Robles returning for them. Robles, of course, have suffered a fractured left arm, as I heard, and if that is the case, then he most likely is going to be out for the season. And judging by the fact that Robles, once again, like his time with the Red Bulls, where he has been kind of bailed out, this defense that has been relatively weak in the past couple of games, or at least tried to bail out this defense at times, this is definitely a huge loss. And that, the defensive woes for Miami, is going to continue if Robles is not going to be coming back in this season. And that, therefore, I think in terms of prediction of this game, I expect the Red Bulls to win this one. And that, again, the Red Bulls, I think in the last 3 games, they have definitely shown some progress. And even in the 3-1 away loss to Orlando, I thought they played well enough, and that if they would have just finished their chances, that they could have probably got a point out of Orlando in this game. Whereas Miami, as much as I was really giving them some hope after they kind of gone on a bit of a good run, these last 3 games has not gave me any promise that things are going to turn around with this team. And again, especially the fact that they do not have one of their best playmaker in Pizarro for at least half of the season, but most likely not going to have their best goalkeeper in Robles in goal, stopping those chances this could really be a problem for Miami, and that I think if they continue to go on this losing run and don't figure things out, they could unfortunately be missed out on the playoffs, which, it won't be the worst thing because, again, expansion team, they usually never make it to their playoffs in their first ever season. But when you look at Miami and their expectation coming into this season, where they hope to try to at least get into the playoff position, they will feel like this is going to be a huge disappointment. The fact that they are not going to make the playoffs, despite the fact that they thought that they built a good roster for a team to be chasing for those playoff spots by the end of the season. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Atlanta versus Orlando. So this game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and I believe this is the third time that both of these teams are meeting against each other, which means that this is going to be the last time both of these teams are going to meet each other, because MLS have already said that teams can only meet a maximum 3 times in the regular season due to the shortened season. But in this third meeting, it's kind of, I would say, a little bit of a rubber match series, because in the first meeting between both of these teams, it was Orlando getting a 3-1 win against Atlanta on the road and getting a historic first win. And finally, Orlando City fans can say that Atlanta is no longer their daddy, and that we finally were able to beat them in this rivalry. Whereas last time, Orlando was on their way to make it 2 in a row in this rivalry, but then Atlanta got a late equalizer, and that Orlando have to salvage to a 1-1 draw. Now, player on international duty for Atlanta, there's actually nobody that's going to be on international duty, which is kind of strange, because you would always think Atlanta would at least have 1 or 2 players that is out for international duty, but since they are putting pretty much a USL kind of squad right now, it's kind of unsurprising they have nobody that's going to be missing on international duty. While for Orlando, Galese and Mendez unfortunately will be out for international duty, and that is definitely a couple of big losses, especially Pedro Galese, their starting goalkeeper that's going to be representing Peru for the South American qualifier. Yeah, that's going to be a big loss for these next couple of games, and especially Orlando is in a race to not only make the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history, but also chase down Toronto and Columbus for those top 3 spots. Losing Galese is going to definitely put a damp into their hopes. But that being said, I want to say, I'm going to say it's going to be a draw between both of these teams, because I know this is going to be a big test for Atlanta. And, the last game that Atlanta won 4-0 against DC, I would say that it's more to do with the fact that DC is an absolute mess, more than the fact that Atlanta might have turned things around. And we've seen this season where they tend to have a good resort there, and you thought that this might be a turning point for Atlanta, and then the very next week they basically lay an egg. So, yeah, I'm hoping being in this game, since they're playing against their big rival, they're going to be a little bit more up for it. And again, with Orlando missing a couple of key guys, especially their starting goalkeeper, I think Atlanta will be a little bit more of interest going forward and really test the backup goalkeeper for Orlando. So, yeah, I'm gonna say it's going to be a draw between both of these teams, even though still I think Orlando City is going to be coming into this game as the favorite against their hated rival. Now, moving on, in terms of the next match, is New England versus Toronto. So the Revs currently have a record of 5-7-3, while Toronto has a record of 9-4-2, as this game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. For New England, yeah, their home woes continue after that 0-0 draw against Nashville, as they have only won once this season at home, which is probably the biggest reason why they are not a team that is actually chasing for those top spot in the Eastern Conference. Like, imagine if they can able to put those home draw into 3 points. This could have been a team that could be right up there with Orlando, Toronto, and also Philly for those top spots. But because of the fact that they've dropped so many home resort this season, they have only find themselves 6th in the Eastern Conference, While for Toronto, they have been red hot in the last couple of games, and that they have gone on an unbeaten run of 5 games, including winning 4 out of 5 games. And these 5 games were not a joke. I mean, these 5 games including beating the top 2 team in the Eastern Conference for a while, that is the Philadelphia Union and Columbus Crew, and that they look like they're a team. All of a sudden are the one to beat coming out of the Eastern Conference. Now, for the players on international duty, the good news for both of these teams is that nobody is going to be missing on international duty for both of them. But in terms of prediction in this game, I got to go with Toronto. I mean, again, the home woes for New England, I feel like it's going to continue against a red-hot Toronto team, and that really the big reason why New England is really struggling this season at home is because they just don't know how to put away their chances, and that in the last game it was a perfect kind of scenario where they could actually get 3 points against Nashville that pretty much are just throwing away the game and kind of had their throwaway game by starting no striker whatsoever and just play out to a 0-0 draw, and yet they somehow still aren't able to get a goal in that game and get the crucial 3 points that they need at home. While for Toronto, as long as if they are not going to have a big letdown after these two big wins that they had in these last 2 weeks, I think they should be easily able to get a win against a New England team that, if they don't finish in this game and they don't put away their chances, yeah, this could definitely be a long night for New England play against a very red-hot TFC team. But moving on, in terms of the next match, to a game that is probably one of the more one-sided game of this season, and probably one of the easiest game to predict, and that of course is the Philadelphia Union versus FC Cincinnati, as the Union has an 8-4-3 record and FC Cincinnati has a 3-4-8 record, and this game also kick off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Philly unfortunately did lose 2-1 against Toronto away, while FC Cincinnati have scored a league low 11 goals so far this season. Player on international duty for the Union, it was going to be Jose Martinez, but Martinez says that he's not going to join with his national team and did not decline to do so. So that's definitely great news, the fact that at least they're not going to lose him on international duty. And because of that, neither of these teams are going to lose player on international duty. And again, this is on paper look like the most one-sided game and probably the most easiest game to predict. And I'm going to say Philly is going to win this one, and they should win this one comfortably, because despite the fact that, yes, they did suffer a tough loss against Toronto in the last game, they're about to play an FC Cincinnati game that is pretty much a free win for them. Like, there's no disrespect to FC Cincinnati, but with the way that they've been struggling in terms of scoring goal and also their rope form in the past couple of games, and that they're about to play a Philly side that is going to be very angry about that 2-1 loss that they suffer at Toronto, and they're once again back at home, which they have been exceptional this season at home. I expect this should be a relatively easy win for Philly, and that FC Cincinnati, they'll need to have some of those Quakes versus LAFC kind of magic if they are able to pull off a huge upset against a Union team that are looking to bounce back and looking to keep pace for those top spots in the Eastern Conference. But moving on, in terms of the next match, and the last match on this preview, is Columbus and Montreal. So the Crew coming into this game with a 9-4-2 record, while Montreal has a 5-2-8 record. This game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Now Columbus, in the last couple of games, they kind of gone through a little bit of a blip, as they of course lost that game against Toronto and then drew 0-0 against FC Dallas. But the good news is they're back home in this game, and that home has really been the reason why Columbus are a team that is tied with Toronto for the top spot in the Eastern Conference and also the Supporters' Shield standings, because they have yet to not only lost this season at home, but they have not drawn at home, as they've been perfect so far in terms of winning every single game this season at home. While Montreal, they are winless in 5 games, but at least in the last game they were able to finish with 11 men, just the second time they have done that in the past 6 games. Now, players on international duty for Columbus, nobody is on international duty for Columbus, but the bad news is they're not going to have Zalaria, who's going to be out for a couple of weeks with the hamstring injury, and there's no word on if Eloy Rome could potentially be in this game after he was subbed off in the last game. Now, for Montreal, it was going to be Diop that was going to be missed during international duty, but just like Jose Martinez, Diop decided to deny to join his national team, so he's going to stay with Montreal as the starting goalkeeper, while Lappinainen and Raitala will be representing Finland on the international duty, and they're not going to have them for the next couple of weeks, which definitely is a big loss because Lappinainen, besides Kyoto, are probably the most dangerous weapon for this Montreal Impact side. But that being said, this, like the FC Cincinnati game, is kind of a pretty easy prediction. You know, Columbus, as I said, they have not dropped points at home, and I don't expect them to do in this game, even without Zalarian and potentially without Eloy Rome, and still won't have Darlington Nagbe in their starting 11. I mean, they're facing against a Montreal side that clearly is on a downward trend right now, and I expect Columbus should be able to kind of find themselves back into the form that they had in the past couple of weeks and get out of this little blip that they have been in a 2-game winless run. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for part 1 of this preview. Like I said, I'm going to do part 2 of the preview right after I finish recording this video and upload it onto my channel, and that I'll just immediately write the boards for the second game of, or the second batch of these 6 games action, and look at the last 7 games that's going to be taking place in the midweek action. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, let me know in the comments below in terms of these 6 games and your prediction for these 6 games that is going to be first happening on Tuesday, and also the first 5 games on Wednesday. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next